My name is Tom Fain. I'm the senior judge today. I'm also a retired securities litigation lawyer. I'm also the movable pawn in today's schedule. I was scheduled for another session, and they just now moved me to this one. So I'm unfamiliar with it. So if I make some critical mistake, which will influence your future, be sure to call it to my attention. The 10-minute presentation, as I know you know, is not interrupted by questions or comments. After they're all done, I may give some questions or comments. If I have no questions, don't view that as a sign of failure, because that means you did a good job. I'll say, which is the first team? Okay, step up.
In the chalk box? Yes. I feel like I'm going to step out of the chalk box.
Okay, go.
All right. So, the International Association of Jesuit Universities has sponsored the Inspirational Paradigm, which is delivered by the Integrative Justice Model and Humanistic Management. These programs, or these frameworks, are meant to prepare and inspire future business leaders within the workplace to work in ethical and sustainable ways.
So we recognize the need to revamp Jesuit business education to foster leaders that are future-focused, creating inspiring working environments, and overall contributing to sustainability.
The ethical issue here, though, is that businesses don't have tools or the ethical frameworks to actually address environmental sustainability challenges within the manufacturing industry. So we have to show you an actual real application, though, of the integrative justice model through our experiential learning project.
So the goal of this is to balance social and economic factors in addressing any environmental sustainability issues. The solution that we propose is using the inspirational paradigm as a delivery method and implementing the integrative justice model and humanistic management to foster growth for leaders of today.
So the integrative justice model is actually a normative ethical framework. So what that means is it's the way things ought to be within the business world, right? So there's 5 main core tenets, and it's actually inspired on contemporary management theory and Jesuit philosophy, which is Catholic social teaching. And it has 5 main core tenets, which are authentic engagement with non-exploitative intent, and co-creation of value, representation of all stakeholders, investing in future consumers without endangering the environment, and then focusing on long-term profit management versus short-term profit maximization.
So humanistic management is a leadership style all focused on putting forth human dignity and ethical behavior in front and center. Think of this as not just focused on the individual, but how your actions affect others, but as society as a whole. In saying this, people make businesses what they are. And we know that today, and because of that, and using humanistic management as a tool for this, people in any business position can address these environmental sustainability challenges head on. This then increases productivity, efficiency, quality, and fosters a healthy workplace environment. As mentioned beforehand, the delivery method for this is the inspirational paradigm, which is the groundwork of the Jesuit Business Educational Program and Leading with Love.
So Leading with Love, it's kind of funny how that actually came about. So one of the companies that we actually worked with, Barry Waymiller, the CEO of Barry Waymiller, Bob Chapman, was actually at a wedding once. And he was so inspired by how the bride's family and the groom's family came together and unified as one. He was really inspired by the love, the compassion, the care, the kindness that everybody shared in that wedding, right? And he wanted to make that a reality within the workplace. And so he created the Lead with Love program. And by doing that, he took some of the ideals of the integrative justice model and the inspirational paradigm to create better leaders within the workplace and a better work environment to lead with love.
So Barry Waymiller and Rockwell Automation are two multi-billion-dollar international companies that are platinum partners. But not only that, but they have effective collaboration through the last decades. Now, this shows that what Barry Waymiller and Rockwell have implemented is effective in not only addressing their own internal needs, but collaborating for the betterment of the world in a more sustainable way.
So a lot of people or businesses tend to shy away from implementing sustainability and ethics. And our experiential case actually proves otherwise. So we did a study incorporating Barry Waymiller and Berkshire Hathaway, and we received some data from that. And the data showed that if you put in $10,000 in the year 2000 into Barry Waymiller, you'd be walking and pulling your money out today with around $250,000. If you had put that money into Berkshire Hathaway, you'd be pulling out just about 60. On top of that, Barry Waymiller has a compound annual growth rate of about 15%, and Berkshire Hathaway has one that's just about 8%. And so what this data proves is that incorporating the ideas we're talking about today, the sustainable and the IJM, the humanistic management, it leads to long-term financial success.
So this humanistic approach and integrative justice model shows that these frameworks are actually effective in when companies collaborate together in addressing any sustainability challenges. But by specifically combining these two frameworks through the delivery method of the inspirational paradigm, Jesuit business universities can foster stronger leaders of today. Now, through all these efforts, businesses will be able to foster long-term success, develop and implement strong and solid ethical frameworks, and achieve and align with the overall goals of the SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you.
You didn't take your full 10 minutes. Okay, there's going to be no comments today. Let's see, who's the next team?
I think we are.
Okay. Step up. Okay.
Good morning, I'm Maria,
I'm Micah.
And I'm Peyton.
and we are Waste Minimization Consultancy. I'd like to start off with a question. Do you know what the 3 biggest pollutants are in this world? Well, let me tell you. The first is the energy sector, the second is transportation, and the third is food waste. 1/3 of the food that we produce is wasted every single year. This is a huge issue because that means that we're wasting valuable resources that we think that when allocated properly can better maximize the outcome of food placement. The problem here is that food waste contradicts sustainability and exacerbates food insecurity. One of the biggest contributors to this food waste problem is the grocery store industry. And one of these grocery stores is Whole Foods. Whole Foods has a big problem. Whole Foods, at the end of the day, decides to throw away 30% of what's on their shelves and not including huge amounts of food from their hot bar, their bakery, their deli, etc. You may have seen a recent TikTok that went viral about a dumpster diver who revealed what was found outside of the Whole Foods dumpsters at the end of the day. The world was shocked to see that there was over 100 loaves of bread, unopened olive oil, baby food, and huge amounts of produce. This is a huge problem because all of these things were still edible and hadn't expired yet. The problem is that Whole Foods, their approach and their answer was that they rely on being the most healthy and fresh producer out there.
Sorry about that.
Now that I've identified the problem, let me introduce you to our suggested solution. Our solution is a comprehensive food waste reduction strategy that consists of a partnership with Too Good To Go. For those of you who don't know the B Corp Too Good To Go is an app that connects consumers with bakeries, restaurants, cafes, and more, all to sell unsold food at the end of the day at a discounted price. This takes on in the form of goodie bags that we will talk about more in detail, but I'll pass it along to my colleague Peyton to tell you more.
So from a legal standpoint specifically, Whole Foods is already doing a couple things, navigating legal frameworks. The first thing they're doing is they're navigating the FDA food code to ensure safe handling and distribution practices. Additionally, they're also currently navigating a mix of legislation from 14 cities and states across the US. These include California's own SB 1383, which calls for all businesses that handle food in the state of California, including Whole Foods, to minimize food that would otherwise go to waste by 20% by 2025. Additionally, Austin, Texas's own, which is also where Whole Foods is from, Universal Recycling Ordinance calls for a similar percentage of food to be composted, to be recycled, to be put back in the ecosystem one way or another. And these are things that they're already doing. But when it comes to a partnership specifically with Too Good To Go, as Maria said, this is really quite a simple situation for them from a legal standpoint, because Too Good To Go already has an in-house licensing agreement template that Whole Foods can jump right into. And the only two things that they really have to deal with from a litigation standpoint with Too Good To Go would be basically kind of determining the splits, the distribution splits of these surprise bag revenues, as well as just navigating anything down the line from other disputes that might occur between the two companies. Additionally, as Maria said, Too Good To Go is a certified B Corp, meaning that legally and ethically they're going above and beyond kind of the standard regulations that are put in place, not only in the US, but around the world. And finally, it's important to note that both Whole Foods and Too Good To Go have similar target demographics in the sense that Whole Foods and Too Good To Go partner people under the age of 34, meaning that legally this is very simple for them and they can jump right into this. It also helps them economically in the sense that they can kind of target a similar audience and also produce these additional revenue streams and bring people into the store that might not help otherwise. And kind of just segueing that as a way into the economic practices and how this can benefit economically for Whole Foods. The things that they're currently having in place, as Maria said, these composting activities, some of these other waste minimization activities, these are great, but they're not necessarily enhancing their economic bottom line. And we want to target an opportunity that not only doesn't exist within their sustainability practices, which is basically targeting these perishable items from their hot bar, from their bakery, etc., that are being thrown away. None of their current practices are things that target saving these items, but additionally can provide an additional economic revenue stream, which is really, really huge for the company and can kind of help them target a different base and also serve as something of kind of a marketing material for them, a marketing promotion for them. And it's really also great to note that Too Good To Go is not only a recently profitable company, but they're also a growing company. For the first time in 2023, they announced that they were profitable at 102 million euros. Additionally, they also in August of 2023 attracted a 1.6 million person monthly consumer base through their iOS and their Android platforms, meaning these are people that are accessing, through the Too Good To Go mobile app, and that was up 60% from the same time in August 2022, a year prior. Additionally, it's really important to note that economically, this has an opportunity not only in the US, but also beyond the US. Both Whole Foods and Too Good To Go operate in the US, the United Kingdom, and Canada, and this is great from an economic and a legal standpoint, kind of meshing those two things back together in the sense that not only is there greater economic opportunity if Whole Foods wants to expand from the US, but also the United Kingdom and especially Canada have legislation, have federal protections in place that actually encourage these companies such as Whole Foods to put in these sustainable practices. So we really believe that not only is this an advantage from a legal standpoint, and there's lots of flexibility and opportunities within this, but also it's a way to kind of target something economically that they're not realizing their full potential with their waste minimization practices right now, while also doing something that is great for the environment.
So why mention, this legal framework or this economic framework? Well, the main issue is we know that no good deed goes unpunished. So we wanted to ensure that, while we want to take advantage of being able to provide all these people with affordable food, that this isn't going to cause backlash for Whole Foods. And on top of that it will be accessible, both like the app of Too Good To Go is accessible to the people who need it, and the fact that it is growing will only increase the amount of accessibility for people who might need this discounted food. And we can kind of compare these solutions between what Whole Foods is currently implementing ethically, as well as our solution and why we think ours is the best. First, it's going to alleviate the issue of food waste as an environmental issue. As we said previously, in the food industry as a whole, a third of the food is wasted. And for Whole Foods specifically because of their business model surrounding fresh food daily, so much food is wasted and can't be donated. And this is kind of going on Whole Foods' existing initiatives and why we think ours is better. They kind of have two main initiatives, which is the composting initiative and the food bank partnerships. And in terms of composting, we understand that this is great, reducing the environmental impact of things that could be expired. But what would be better is allowing people who could never buy healthy food from Whole Foods, especially in the countries in which Whole Foods operates, like the US, Canada, and the UK, where healthy food for the same price as going to McDonald's and getting a Big Mac is near impossible. On top of that, with the food bank partnerships, we really admire Whole Foods as this leader in sustainability. However, if they want to actually walk the walk, we understand that this partnership with food banks, a lot of the food that is being thrown away can't be donated. For example, any of the perishables, like from the hot bar, the deli, the cafes, and the bakeries, these are things that can't be donated to food banks under food bank regulation because they are perishable items. So this isn't taking the food out of anyone's mouth. This is just providing another option for those who have financial insecurity to access this healthy, nourishing food. On top of that, this is allowing more options and kind of can also destigmatize some of the feelings that people might have in needing assistance in finding healthier food. Rather than having to go to a food bank, you can go to Whole Foods just like anyone else using the Too Good To Go app. So really, we believe that this is the best solution. It is implementing both nourishing people and helping the planet at the same time while being feasible. So this is really hitting that triple bottom line. And on top of that, it's just really too good to go. Thank you.
Okay, who's next? Okay, you guys are undergraduate 12. Is that your team member?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I believe so. Okay. You can begin whenever you want.
Hello everyone, my name is André Benicio, and I'm here today to discuss how Shein can become a more eco-friendly and more ethical corporation in the future. In our past conversation, we actually pointed out that Shein uses a ton of single-use plastics into their packaging, which since Shein is one of the leaders in the market of fashion, actually ship around 1 million packages every single day, creating a huge carbon footprint worldwide. And we at 3HA Consulting actually created a very simple solution for this problem, which is Shein partnering up with an American company that already exists called EcoPackables. They created a new sort of packaging that is biodegradable and compostable out of corn materials that after it's first used is actually decomposed by itself after 3 months in nature. And we believe that with this solution, Shein is going to be able to reduce carbon footprint and also become more ethical and more green. I'm going to pass it over to my colleagues to talk about the ethical considerations of our presentation.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chidu Ziaje, and I'll be talking a little bit about the ethical and sustainable considerations and how this EcoPackables will benefit Shein. So for first off, we have to look at the environmental concerns that Shein currently has. So Shein has been accused as being one of the leading polluters in the fast fashion industry. Along with this, their current zip-top plastic bags are a single-use plastic bag delivery system. Specifically, they are called virgin plastic bags. And along with this, right now, they have committed to having a ethical responsibility to have environmental policies added to the company. So as well as this, virgin plastic bags are being used to ship to over 200 countries globally, and that has caused a great level of plastic spillover in oceans and other waterways as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about just basic facts about plastic pollution. So right now, 14 million tons of plastic end up in the ocean every year, and about 2 to 4 tons of plastic pollution end up in the global south. Unfortunately, the global south doesn't have the resources to take care of this, and they end up burning the plastics, but this is not a viable solution as Burning of plastics can actually cause a release of a lot of toxic chemicals, specifically called dioxin, and dioxin is a cancer-causing chemical. So dioxin can have a lot of issues that it brings towards any people, and one of the first ones is called oxidative stress, as well as it can cause a lot of metabolic disorders in individuals affected by it, and can even affect reproductive and development issues in people. Maybe passing on the other parts to colleague Armin.
Thank you, Doozy. Thank you. I would like to start off by thanking you for your time. My name is Armin Kazri, and I will go more into detail about some concerns in regards with the SEC, also known as the Security Exchange Commission, as well as some child labor concerns that have been happening within the company, harsh conditions, and most importantly, going overtime on work. So in relation to the SEC, they actually have been getting involved and investigating Shein as a company overall in China, actually, and one of their plants over there, because the Shein wants to become a publicly traded company in the United States. However, in order to do that, there needs to be approval by the SEC, and the SEC had certain concerns in regards that Shein wasn't practicing in a fair and equal way in giving opportunity to their employees. Starting off with child labor is something that definitely is a problem throughout many countries. However, there are certain regulations that have to be met overall, and Shein is unfortunately not meeting those requirements. They have a lot of children under the legal age that are actually working, and most importantly, they're actually working overtime, which when it comes to children under the legal age, that doesn't seem to be the case at all. Usually there's a legal requirement and they cannot go above that threshold. In regards to the activities that are going on in harsh conditions, there's actually an individual that stepped aside as an employee, and he did share his experience with Shein as a company, and he did say that he did have to go through a lot of different steps, and his body actually went through a lot of harm because he had to lift many different heavy equipment and so forth, and that actually caused him to have problems later on. And the SEC has seen these concerns, but they don't want to just take it with a grain of salt. They actually want to do their own investigation, because while having a company that is being publicly traded, they want equal and fair opportunity to not go behind the curtains and do something that is not legally and ethically viable. And most importantly, it is important to note the factor of working overtime. This individual that was also speaking out was sharing that he wasn't even being compensated for the time that he was working. And most importantly, the company threatened him that if he wasn't going to continue working hard, then they would fire him. I will pass it back on to Doozy to discuss more of the ethical concerns.
So as my colleague previously said, Ecopackables is the answer to Shein's ethical considerations towards worker rights and towards the environment. And that's because Ecopackables is a biodegradable product. So it will completely eliminate any plastic waste that Shein will be responsible or was responsible for. And as well as this, there will be no environmental drawbacks to having Ecopackables enlisted. As well as this, Shein has already is being committed to having gas emissions cut by 25% by 2030. And having Ecopackables enlisted under Shein will help it reach these goals sooner.
As well as to add to what Doozy was saying, in relation to marketing, these ethical concerns, if they are attended to, this will be beneficial to Shein overall as a company, because although they do have their valuable and loyal customers, they will also be focusing on a wider range of audience that will want to be purchasing their products because they are going in a more ethical way of operating a business.
And lastly, to note, the consumer trust will be increased with Shein becoming a more ethically and sustainable business, as well as showing environmental responsibility for their products and their third-party suppliers. So having great consumer trust and transparency will allow the brand to differentiate itself from others in that same fast fashion industry. And because of this, it will make consumers want to contribute to buying this product, and the demand will increase in a lot of demographics such as Gen Z. Thank you all for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. I think 26 is next. You guys ready? Whenever you want.
Good morning, we are Horizon Consulting. My name is Sophie Hollowell.
I'm Anastasia Ariano. And I'm Sanvi.
All right, and today we'll be discussing the sustainable consumption of Coca-Cola products in Mexico. We first wanted to begin by offering you a little insight into Coca-Cola's overall mission and some of their core values. Coca-Cola's mission statement is to refresh the world and make a difference, and a lot of their core values are focused specifically on existing to excel for their associates, their consumers, their customers, their owners. So we see that within Coca-Cola, we're not just trying to drive one bottom line, we're also considering the impact that we have with our constituents. And moving a little bit more towards what the problem that we're looking at is today. Within Mexico specifically, there's a huge obesity epidemic, and then also a correlation to overconsumption of SSBs, or sugar sweetened beverages. Coca-Cola has a huge presence within these regions, and with a lot of rural communities, we see that Coca-Cola is actually cheaper than water. We'll be focusing specifically on one community within Mexico, in Chiapas, which is their poorest region, called San Cristobal de las Casas. And within this region, there's a really close proximity of a FEMSA Coca-Cola bottling facility, as well as this problem that we've mentioned earlier, where Coca-Cola is cheaper than water. And so this community relies very heavily on consumption of Coca-Cola for their main source of liquid. They don't have consistent access to running water or clean drinking water, and they really have very little infrastructure of support to provide any economical reasoning to be able to afford water. And it really creates this cyclical issue where these people don't have the infrastructure to bring themselves out of poverty and be able to improve their quality of living, as well as a huge reliance on Coca-Cola for any means of economic support, which adds into this obesity epidemic where they really aren't able to grow out of it. And it's been a problem that's been continuing for decades. And so one of the, I think, biggest things that we need to consider within this is that on top of it being a huge ethical concern, people in San Cristobal de las Casas consume about 2.2 liters of Coca-Cola per day, which is almost 800 per liter per capita. If you compare that to North America, which is only about 124, we see huge consumption rates. And that is a huge reason as to why we're seeing obesity and a bunch of health concerns. Around 3,000 people within the region actually die from obesity or heart conditions, and it's one of the leading causes of death in Mexico. So we see a lot of ethical implications with this problem, but also from a business perspective and from a business standpoint, this problem is globally recognized. There are a lot of articles and a lot of criticism for the relationship that Coca-Cola has with the people of San Cristobal, and we really want to move forward protecting our corporate brand image and perception, which generates a lot of value for Coca-Cola. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Anna to discuss our two SDGs.
Yeah, so we'll be focusing on two SDGs, SDGs 9 and SDG 12. So SDG 9 focuses on industry, infrastructure, and innovation. Now, in terms of industry, we believe that they should invest in the improvement of infrastructure, and to support what the three-step solution that Sophie just discussed. Additionally, we think they should have invest in water-saving technologies in order to be able to get access to clean waters to the San Cristobal community. And lastly, in terms of industry, we believe that they should engage with the San Cristobal community and to understand their wants and needs and how to get them access to clean water. Now, in terms of infrastructure, we believe that they should implement groundwater conservations and additionally work towards water sourcing in order to distribute clean water to San Cristobal in order to mitigate these health issues. Such as obesity, diabetes, and heart conditions. Lastly, in terms of innovation, we decided to keep this generalized and innovate within the supply chain operations of the Coca-Cola industry. Now, I'll pass it off to Sanvi.
Sorry, just wanted to interject. I want to provide a little bit more context to the SDGs that we're promoting today. Essentially today, we really wanted to promote a three-pronged solution to Coca-Cola. So one being, we're going to suggest in the short run, providing access to water to the people of San Cristobal because of the proximity of the bottling facility. And then on top of that, having a marketing push. So we're communicating to these people what the health implications of overconsumption of Coca-Cola looks like. And then in the long run, increasing groundwater access and usage within the region, as well as looking at other innovative technologies to provide infrastructure so that these people have access to clean drinking water. And then I'll go ahead and pass it off to Santi to discuss SDG 12.
Yeah, so moving on from the three-pronged solution, I'm going to be talking about SDG 12, which is responsible consumption and production. So going back to what Sophie mentioned about the three-pronged solution, we really want to push out a marketing campaign that promotes sustainable consumption patterns and encourages consumers to make healthier choices. So this really means we want to get the people of San Cristobal to shift from Coca-Cola products to the CL water products, and that's just the water brands that Coca-Cola owns. Next, we want the environmental benefits of a lower environmental footprint. So taking advantage of underlying consumer demand like different flavored waters and that of CL water. So that really means in San Cristobal, vendors actually have low supply of CL water because customers just prefer Coca-Cola waters, but there is also a demand for water. And so getting a different array of flavors of CL water as well as different like mineral waters and sparkling waters and just like a wide variety of products other than Coca-Cola, this will be great for customers. Also encouraging awareness on the impact of beverage choices of health and environment. So this really means providing a clear and honest health campaign on why Coca-Cola beverages are bad for you and why CL water is a much better option. So I'm going to go shift it back to Sophie to talk about the key takeaways.
Okay, so really the main thing that we want you to take away from our project today is that if we look at the problem within San Cristobal and with Mexico, we see that there's this huge association of obesity and health concerns with overconsumption of Coca-Cola. And we want Coca-Cola to take action to begin to protect both their corporate brand images and their corporate perception, as well as also taking advantage of current consumer trends, which are more health conscious and a lot more sustainable. So we see that stakeholders are beginning to hold Coca-Cola accountable for their actions of promoting a lot of Coca-Cola consumption within remote areas like San Cristobal de las Casas. And yeah, thank you so much for your time.
And last but certainly not least, we have number 8.
Yes. I said easy enough.
Yeah. Start whenever you're ready.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Trisha Bosell, and
I'm Natalie Odin.
And we are here with Pine Consulting. So today we're going to be discussing the ethics around implementing cross-laminated timber into Hilton's future hotel builds, and also just more environmental sustainability around the construction process. So first thing is first, we believe that everyone should have access to clean air, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't. So believe it or not, 7 million people die every year because of air pollution, which 7 million, that's a lot. So everyone, let's just take in a deep breath, breathe out. So according to the World Health Organization, 99% of people breathe in air that doesn't even meet their basic standards. So you're probably wondering, where are all these air pollutants coming from? And believe it or not, the construction industry, with using cement and steel as their primary building materials, contributes to 12% of CO2 emissions. Now you're probably thinking, what can be our solution to reduce these emissions and make construction more environmentally sustainable? And it's called cross-laminated timber. So if 90% of urban builds implement cross-laminated timber, we could prevent 106 gigatons of CO2 emissions entering the atmosphere by 2100.
So in addition to the private sector, Hilton has an ethical obligation to help out with the transition to sustainability. The United Nations actually mentions that without the private sector, the sustainability development goals will fail. So our governments can't face these problems alone. So, so we need to work with this whole of society approach where we work together and we combine our knowledges and our talents from all of our diverse societies.
Okay, so probably after I said the amount of CO2 emissions, you're probably thinking it can't get much worse with these materials, and you're wrong. So believe it or not, people that work on construction sites using cement, they suffer from skin irritation, eye irritation, heat stress, noise stress, and they actually breathe in a bunch of harmful chemicals that cause future respiratory issues. And the same could be said about steel with skin irritation, eye irritation, respiratory issues. And respiratory issues are significant because, believe it or not, steel is one of the biggest air pollutants globally. But in addition, steel kind of has additional risks. So people are more prone to getting hurt on the construction site with skeletal injuries, higher fall risk since you're building higher up. And in addition, they have a higher risk of getting hurt with machinery.
So looking at the ESG report from Hilton, I pulled out a quote which reads as following. We encourage our owners to build or renovate hotels to the highest green building standards that can apply in the hotel's location. Our approach includes providing design guidance during construction as well as operational guidance for our existing portfolio. So this is part of our core values and the way we want to be identified as a company. But it's not actually being implemented in the right way. Like Trisha just mentioned, all these negative impacts of steel and concrete, not only for the environment, but also for our own health. Looking at CLT, on the other hand, like we talked about yesterday, it has much lower environmental impact. So, and that is both for the construction and actually the running of the buildings. So just by doing this easy change of switching your building materials, we can actually align with our own core values.
Okay, so you're probably thinking, wow, CLT sounds great, but don't you need to cut down trees to get timber? And believe it or not, timber infrastructure doesn't significantly contribute to deforestation. Primarily, deforestation is caused by agricultural industries, so such as harvesting palm oil and soy oil. In addition, we have the meat. So usually farm animals require large amounts of land, and in addition, they release numerous CO2 chemicals on top of the effect of already cutting down these trees. And actually, mining contributes significantly to deforestation. So for example, steel uses 50% of iron ore and 60% of coal ore, and that's globally. Another great thing that is unique about cross-laminated timber is since they use modular construction techniques, if you have a building coming to their end of life period, you can actually take out the key structural components and implement it into newer buildings, which not only saves on cost, but makes everything more environmentally sustainable.
Okay, so we know that all of the, like, this is a big problem for our planet, but would you ever connect it to injustice? So the International Rescue Committee actually has a list of all the countries that are most affected by these pollutions. And these countries have all something in common, except being like contributing very little to the pollutions. They're actually very vulnerable when it comes to the effects of the climate change. So imagine that you're on a team, you're doing most of the work, but someone else is actually getting the credit and the benefits of it. That's kind of what's happening here. So basically, the people and the countries that are not even contributing to the environmental problem are actually being hurt the % of all the global emissions when it comes to consumption. So why should we? So what we need to change. It's not only because of the planet, it's also about injustice. And then we need to stop kicking the people that are already on the ground.
All right, so I would say sometimes, we may not want to admit this, but we don't really think about how our actions today will affect the future of our planet. And sometimes we don't really think about how future generations will suffer for the consequences of our actions. So, for example, I'm sure some of us flew here, majority of us probably drove here to get to the college. Wouldn't it be nice to know that your carbon footprint would be reduced when you arrive to your hotel and you see a beautiful cross-laminated timber building? So not only can this reduce your carbon footprint and make you feel a little bit better, but can it also make construction more environmentally sustainable in the end?
So cross-laminated timber, and timber in general, is a renewable and sustainable building material which contributes to an environmentally friendly construction. And it also promotes sustainable forest management, such as reforesting and selective logging. And it can also reduce our carbon emissions, like we talked about, even after we harvest the trees. So it can still absorb the carbon in the air through its, just through the woods, through the material.
All right, so what do you guys think? Did we sell you on CLT? Thank you.
Thanks to all of you. Does anybody in this audience intend to pursue a business or a profession where you make your living talking? Good choice. I made my living talking. I was always talking. If I wasn't talking, I was writing. This section is supposed to be called feedback, but feedback doesn't work for me. I want to leave you here with something that you might be able to use in pursuing your life. So I'm going to give you something that I think are constructive suggestions. If you find one you like, you may want to write it down, because my personality may not stay with you beyond the time you walk out the door. Here they are. When you use keywords, and you all do that, because that's why you're here. This is an ethics contest, so you got to use the language of ethics. If you're doing that in life, you're going to have to define your terms, because your audience, including me, doesn't really understand some of these terms. That causes me to worry that maybe you don't either, which is a concern. So if you're going to use terms which you think are unfamiliar to your audience, take the time to define them. Next, in terms of your presentation, some of you, I recognize faces. We've seen you yesterday. And yesterday I made suggestions sometimes to some of these groups. Forgive me if you've been in one of the groups to which I've already made these suggestions. When you're talking, slow down. What happens is the brain wants this to be over, because this is difficult. This is challenging, particularly at your stage of development. For me, I could do it asleep, but for you, it's new material. So slow down, get control of your brain. One of the ways you can do that effectively is go out and buy 3 marbles. Remember marbles that kids used to play with? Put them in your mouth and talk out loud and take a video of it. 2 things will happen. You will slow down because you got to manipulate those marbles. And when you're done, you will speak more clearly. You will enunciate every syllable. Do that until you get better. Now, I speak from knowledge, because of 50 years of talking to groups as large as 25,000, I made every mistake possible. So I learned. Next, when you're up here, talk to the back of the room. Don't talk to the first row, because a lot of you are talking like that because you're talking to the first row. You need to be talking to the back row. Throw that voice out there. You can't throw it out there if you make it in your mouth. You have to make it in your chest, way down deep, and then it has some power. Then you will be heard and you will be understood. That's all I have to say. And like Mark Twain is famous for saying, being talked to death is a terrible way to die, so I'm going to quit. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to take them. Good, that tells me I must have been lucid. Thank you for coming. Thank you for participating.